Let's talk about what happens when two narcissists get together and they form a couple or they are the parents of a family. It can actually be a very volatile relationship and typically often is because both people in that relationship are trying to gain the upper hand, be in control, manipulate the other person, and they are in competition with one another. And a lot of times it ends up looking a lot like domestic violence. And you see this a lot in domestic violence. You see it a lot in high conflict divorces, high conflict family custody battles where both parents have narcissistic traits or narcissistic personality disorder, and they are constantly running and chasing after the other. They are obsessed with each other. They are spying on each other. A lot of times they are invested in what finances the other person has, who the other person is seeing, and if there's children that are involved in the mix. A lot of times what they do is they triangulate the child, try to turn the child against the other parent. They will gossip about the other parent in front of the child. The child becomes a pawn in the battle for custody and child support funding. And so children are often parents try to take children emotionally hostage and also use them for their own financial gain. And so they may use children to try to gain more child support payments and, not work, so that they could live off child support payments and things like that. In addition to that, there's oftentimes a lot of brainwashing that happens with children in turning the child against the other parent. And this can also happen even when the other parent isn't a narcissist, but both of them do that push pull game with the child. So both parents are whispering in that child's ear. Both parents are, essentially talking shit about each other in front of their children. Both parents are also pumping their child for information about what the other one is doing. What's the other parent doing? Who's the other parent seeing? How is the other parent making money? Who's been at the other person's house? Tell me every bit of information about your time over there when you went to stay for the weekend. Who's that man, or who's that woman, and all this other kind of stuff. And so children are constantly put in the middle and used as a pawn between narcissistic parents. In addition, the narcissist, even if they become violent with each other and they fight and they get protective orders, they're always kind of watching. They're consumed with what the other person is doing, right? So if that other person has moved on in a relationship, they may even hire private investigators, but they're snooping in social media, but they're consumed with what the other person is doing, even if they've appeared to have moved on, if they've remarried or they're with someone else. And this is usually a lifelong thing. So regardless of if one or both of them gets remarried or they start seeing other people, they're still always going to be obsessed with each other, privately and maybe not even so privately, because if they're very egotistical, they can be braggadocious and they won't even hide it, not even from their new significant other. They may sit around and just sort of reminisce on old stories about, when they were married to so and how so and so cheated and this and that, and just sort of run down this rabbit hole of these old memories of when people when they were toxic with each other, but they sort of get this high off of reminiscing about it, and they tend to do that in front of their children or anybody that will really listen, You kind of have to sit there, and even in front of their new spouse, you kind of have to sit there and listen to, remember when type of stories about, someone who they may have said at one point in time, had all this vitriol for, may have said that they were so abusive, and they sort of reminisce and, laugh about it. But these folks, these two narcissists, they spend a lifetime antagonizing each other, but also being obsessed with one another. And all it takes is for one person out of that relationship, if they could both come back together and say that, hey, let's be together and be a couple again and go through the song and dance all over again, more than likely they would do that. They would drop whoever they're with just to get back in that toxic cycle all over again. And so, even the people that they bring into a relationship with them after they divorce, after they kind of go through spending all this money and time and fighting and arguing, even with all of that, they're still not content with the new person. And that new person, whoever they remarry or whoever they're with, and even their children, will always be a backseat to that toxic narcissist that they were once in a relationship with.